Good morning. It's about 8:05 a.m. and I'm going to do my first blood sugar check of the day. I'm using the Freestyle Precision Neo blood, but it doesn't really matter. And this is the AccuCheck Fast Click. It doesn't really matter what you use. I asked the nurse what brand I should get, and she said whatever your insurance will cover. And my starting blood sugar is 89, which is great. The target that I'm looking for after fasting is under 95. And then I'm going to have my first meal of the day, which is going to be breakfast. And for breakfast, I normally try to have about 30 grams of carbohydrates. So we're making what my husband and I call Blue Monkey oatmeal. It's got, I'm making enough for both of us, so my husband will have like 2/3 of it and I'll have 1/3 of it, but my portion is going to be 1/4 cups of oatmeal, which is 13.5 grams of carbohydrates, a third of a banana, which is 9 grams of carbohydrates, and 1/4 cup of blueberries, which is 5 grams of carbohydrates. So total, that ends up being about 27.5 grams of carbohydrates. And as I mentioned, I'm making enough right now for both of us, and we're going to kind of like divvy it up. So I might not have exactly 27.5 grams, but I have this meal almost every day. And so at this point, I'm pretty confident that it's not going to spike my blood sugar. Even if I accidentally have like 32 grams or 35 grams, it's not really a big deal. It's still basically in that ballpark, and my blood sugar, just I know from experience, is not going to spike from eating this bowl of oatmeal. So while we're kind of letting this simmer, I normally add, actually I say I normally do this, but normally my husband actually makes the oatmeal. But we're going to add the blueberries and the bananas while it's cooking, and that way the fruit will actually cook into the oatmeal and it will give it sort of a natural sweetness. And that way I don't have to add any kind of sweetener to it, but I still kind of get that sweetness added to it. So if you have a sweet tooth and you like to have a little bit of honey or brown sugar in your oatmeal or something like that in the morning, this is kind of a nice alternative because it doesn't have that added sugar. So at this point, I am 37 weeks pregnant and some change. And that is important to know because the way that gestational diabetes works compared to like regular type 1 or type 2 diabetes, the cause of it is actually that the placenta makes your body more insulin resistant. And so a normal pregnant woman who doesn't have gestational diabetes will be producing 2 or 3 times as much insulin during the pregnancy as the 3rd trimester progresses. For those with gestational diabetes, there's a limit where we just cannot produce any more insulin. So I'm going to put a chart or a graph up here. But basically, as your pregnancy progresses, your body is going to become more and more insulin resistant. And that means that the closer you get to 40 weeks, the harder it's going to be to maintain your blood sugar. So for me, being 37 weeks, this is, if you're kind of close to that, you'll get an idea of where my blood sugar is. Of course, everyone is different, and also keep in mind that the meal plan that I'm on is not necessarily going to be exactly what your doctor might recommend for you. Take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, take your doctor's advice. But the goal of this video is just to give you guys some ideas of things you can make. This is definitely not a no-carb diet. That's the other thing I think it's important to keep in mind. I have to eat carbs. I have to eat the right kinds of carbs and the right amount of carbs at the right time. So it's not eliminating carbs from your diet. That's actually very dangerous during pregnancy. You'll have something called a ketone test probably that you'll do in the morning. So I test my urine for ketones, If I'm eating too few carbohydrates, then I could have elevated ketones in my urine. If the ketone levels in my body are too high, that can actually affect the baby's brain development. So it sounds overwhelming when you first start out, but you just kind of get used to eating sort of the same things that you know are going to keep your blood sugar at an even level. For me, that means that I want my blood sugar to be less than 120 2 hours after each meal. Some other things that I would be concerned about. So obviously, if my ketones are elevated, that would be a concern. I'd need to call my doctor. And if my blood sugar ever dips below 60 or above 200, those would be reasons to call my doctor, because below 60 would be way too low and above 200 is way too high. So in general, if my numbers are not above 120, that's good. If every once in a while I get a high number, normally after eating something I shouldn't have been, that's not enough of a reason to call my doctor. It's just something to be mindful of. And maybe don't eat that again, whatever I ate. And you can kind of see that this is, we call this blue monkey oatmeal because it gets sort of this nice bluish purple color to it when the blueberries cook into it. And monkeys because of the bananas. So that's how that looks. There's my oatmeal. And I also, I use this Gestational Diabetes logbook. I'll link it below. I got this on Amazon. It wasn't very expensive. And this is just kind of a nice way to kind of track all the meals that I eat and blood sugar over time, because really what you're kind of looking for is trends. So there's basically a place to put your blood sugar before and after each meal, the number of carbs for the meal, and there's some other things you can add too. You can add how many glasses of water you have in a day, how many hours of sleep, different, like how much fiber and protein was in each meal, just like other notes. If you maybe had a really stressful day, maybe you want to jot that down because stress can affect your blood sugar as well. Or, you know, there's a place to keep track of your exercise, physical activity. So all of these things are just going to paint like a picture of how your diabetes is progressing throughout your pregnancy and things that you can do to either kind of better manage it, or if you're just not able to manage it, this will give your doctor an idea if maybe you do need to be on insulin during your pregnancy. I took my blood sugar at 10:40, and I had my oatmeal at 8:30, so it was a little bit later than 2 hours after, but not enough to really make that much of a difference. My blood sugar was 86, and it's not uncommon for my blood sugar to go down a little bit from the starting amount, like after fasting. I guess what happens during the nighttime sometimes is your liver is actually producing some sugar, and your body doesn't produce insulin in response to that the way that it would produce insulin in response to you eating something with carbs in it. So that's why it's important to have a meal normally right before bed, or like a snack right before bed. So for my next snack, I'm gonna have a little bowl of yogurt and fruit. So the fruit in this, so I have measured out exactly 3/4 a cup of yogurt and a half a cup of blueberries. So the yogurt is 6 grams of carbohydrates. The blueberries are 10 grams of carbohydrates. And then I also measured out half a cup of raspberries, which was 7 grams of carbohydrates. So total, that was 23 grams of carbohydrates. I normally aim for between 15 to 30 grams of carbohydrates for a snack. And I try to get a little bit of protein in there if I can. Having some protein kind of helps you stay full longer, and it also helps your blood sugar not spike. So I'm going to have this right now for my snack. Another option, if you don't want to put so much fruit in your yogurt, I like to use this quinoa granola sometimes. This has 19 grams of carbohydrates for 1/3 of a cup, so you can kind of just figure out how much you want to add and do the math. The yogurt that I'm using is a plain Greek yogurt. The brand is Chobani, and I believe it's a non-fat yogurt, but you can kind of, you know, use whatever you want in there, and just pay attention to the nutrition facts on the back and see what the carbohydrates are. All right, so it's about 12:15. I'm about to go to my doctor's appointment. My doctor's appointment actually didn't start until 1, but it takes me so long to get there that I just went ahead and made my lunch ahead of time. For lunch, I'm going to be having a spinach salad. This salad has some tomatoes, some avocado, feta, and olives in it. And for a dressing, I'm going to be using Brianna's home-style French vinaigrette. This dressing has 0 carbohydrates in it. And actually, I'm just not even going to count anything in this salad towards my carbohydrate total. Yes, technically tomatoes have carbohydrates in them, but it's such a negligible amount. My nurses said if it's something like that, just don't even count it. So I'm going to go ahead and eat this before I leave. And then what I'm bringing with me to eat when I get there is this BLT. So this, I've got, well, I guess it's called a BLAT, a blat. I've got some bacon, some more tomatoes, some avocado, and some spinach, and a bit of cheese. So the carbohydrate for this meal is actually going to be the bread. For the bread, I'm using this, I think it's called Dave's, open it up so you can see it. It's Dave's Killer Bread. It's just a whole grain bread, and it has 22 grams of carbohydrates for 1 slice. It also has 5 grams of protein for each slice. So for 2 slices, I'm getting 44 grams of carbohydrates and 10 grams of protein. So that's going to be my lunch, but I'm going to just bring it with me in the car, and I'm going to eat it at my appointment. Right, it's 4 o'clock. I ended up eating my sandwich at 2 o'clock because I was a little bit confused. I normally go to this one office for my ultrasound appointments, and today they wanted me to go to the hospital, so I was running a little behind. Anyway, ended up not eating until after the appointment, which was 2 o'clock, which is fine. So it's 4 o'clock now, so now I'm testing my blood. Okay, 107, that's fine, it's still in the normal range. So now I think I'm gonna have a snack. So for my snack today, I'm gonna have some cheese and crackers. So the crackers are this brand, Back to Nature. It's 18 grams of carbohydrates for 3 crackers, and or 6 grams per cracker. So I can have 4 crackers for 24 grams. I've also got some cheese that I'm going to cut up. This has 0 carbs, doesn't count towards the total. And I think I'm also going to have some hard-boiled eggs, which also don't count. So basically the carbs for this meal are just coming from the crackers. All right, so here's my little snack plate. Cheese and mustard on the crackers. This is 4 crackers, I just broke them in half. And then some hard-boiled eggs with some paprika, salt, pepper, and mustard. Kind of like my fast and easy version of a deviled egg. And then I'm also going to have some sparkling water. I just found this brand at Whole Foods recently called Nixie. But yeah, it's kind of just like a nice, 0 carb, fun drink. Ginger lime sparkling water. All right, so this is my snack, and it's 4:11 right now. Great. Okay, so it's now 6:20, and we're gonna have our dinner, which is going to be crock pot chicken tacos. So I started the crock pot with the chicken this morning, and basically this is a really simple recipe. It's there's 2 chicken breasts. You put that in, season with whatever spices you want, and then just basically dump a jar of salsa on top and let that cook on low for, I did it for 8 hours on low. The seasonings, I may come over here. So the seasonings that I used are this Wawa Chihuahua seasoning, which doesn't have any sugar in it, and so it has less than a gram of carbohydrates for a serving. And then chipotle powder, which also doesn't have any carbohydrates in it. I also used this roasted chipotle salsa. I used 1 can of this over top of the chicken. So for the entire jar, it's 30 grams of carbohydrates, but I'm splitting this with my husband. Realistically, like this is just a seasoning that's being used on the chicken, so I'm probably not eating like an entire jar of salsa, but just for the purposes of tracking it, I'm going to say that it's 15 grams of carbohydrates for the salsa for a serving. Some toppings that we're adding, potentially, I have all the toppings out that we have. So we have this Cholula hot sauce, which my husband is going to have. I'm not going to have that. Some spinach, which obviously I'm not going to count towards the carbohydrates. Avocado, again, not going to count it towards the carbohydrates. And this cheese blend. And this is like a minuscule amount of carbohydrates as well, so I'm not going to count it. The other source of carbohydrates for this meal is going to be the tortillas, which my lovely husband is frying up over here right now. So I'm just going to have 1, and 1 tortilla is going to be 24 grams of carbohydrates. And I've also got this black bean dip. So this is the only additional topping that has like a more substantial amount of carbohydrates. So for 2 tablespoons, which is 1 serving of this, it's going to be 6 grams of carbohydrates. So I'm going to factor that 6 grams in because I'm going to have some of this on my taco. So that is my plated taco. Doesn't that look amazing? And all of this adds up to 45 grams of carbohydrates. And that's a conservative estimate because, like I said, the salsa, I'm probably not really getting like half of a jar of salsa on this taco. So after filming this, I decided to revise my calculation for the carbohydrate total for my taco because I realized that saying that my 1 taco was consuming half a jar of salsa was a bit crazy. Instead, I decided to go ahead and use what they consider to be a serving size, which is 2 tablespoons, and that's 2 grams of carbohydrates. So instead of saying that I had 15 grams of carbohydrates worth of salsa, I'm going to say that I had 2 grams of carbohydrates for the salsa, and then I added on a glass of milk. And for 1 cup of milk, it's 14 grams of carbohydrates, but I was actually just finishing off a container that we had, so it wasn't quite a cup. So I'm just going to say that's good. That's probably about 45 grams total of carbohydrates, and we're just going to call it a day. Okay, so it's now almost 8:30, so I'm going to go ahead and do my last blood sugar check of the night. And my blood sugar is pretty low, 98, so that's good. I mean, that's the range that I want it to be in. I think now I'm gonna go ahead and make myself my last snack of the night and just start kind of unwinding, getting ready for bed. It's now 9 o'clock and I'm gonna have my last snack of the evening, which is gonna be one of these buttermilk protein waffles. So one waffle is 13 grams of carbohydrates and 6 grams of protein. So here is my waffle. And I'm also going to have half a cup of blueberries, which is 10 grams of carbohydrates. So combined, that's going to be 23 grams of carbohydrates. And then I also just have some lemon ginger tea, which doesn't have any carbohydrates. It's just really enjoyable. So that's my final snack of the evening. I hope this was helpful. I know when I was first diagnosed with gestational diabetes, I watched a lot of videos like this of what other people ate in a day. It really just takes some time to kind of get into a routine and figure out what works best for you. So I think probably the most helpful thing is just making sure that you're keeping track of your blood sugar and seeing how meals are affecting you. All right, well, I probably will not film any more videos until this little guy is born, so wish me luck, and I will see you guys on the other side. Bye.